The Revolution Podcast, Episode 18. Feedback for Nobody's Fault But Mine.
Hi, you're listening to Revolution Podcast. This is Maria Howell as Grace on Revolution.
Golden Spiral Media presents The Revolution Podcast. Want to shop the best selection at the best prices on techno gadgets, computer components, software, cameras, cell phones, appliances? Check out the amazing stuff from our friends at Newegg. We love Newegg because they have all the stuff we need, save us lots of money, and have amazing customer service. Go to goldenspiralmedia.com/Newegg today. Welcome back to the Revolution Podcast, everybody.
I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Daryl.
All right.
You're falling a little behind there, man.
Well, I was just thinking you might try and trump me once I started, so...
No, I
Again,
was
I
just trying to
hesitated.
leave the window open for you. I took it first last time. I'm just trying to be mindful of you having a desire to be first.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then. Well, that was awkward. You still doing all right? You have a couple of cookies in your gut now.
I'm much better now
A
than
fresh
I was
cup of coffee
10 minutes ago.
at your side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost gone.
Yeah, so thanks to my wife for making us cookies. Thanks to myself for making us coffee. And we're glad, thanking you guys for joining us for this episode of the Revolution Podcast. We're glad you're here. And for those in the live show, again, thanks to you guys for being with us tonight. We're glad to have you. We're taking the fan feedback that we received for the fall finale of Revolution, as I mentioned, entitled Nobody's Fault But Mine. We got some good stuff this week. I'm excited to hear it. So
Yeah.
we're going to play that earworm music and we'll get started.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to get things kicked off this week with a feedback about last week's episode, Kashmir. Do you remember that episode?
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
doodle-doo, 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 kind of go back in time. Remember Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
all the stuff that went on in that episode.
I remember an archer taking a bullet to the... Not quite the knee.
Not quite the knee, no. She didn't make it out alive. All right, so we're going to get it kicked off this week with Chris talking about Kashmir.
Hi, you're listening to Revolution
Oh.
Podcast. This is
You know what I did? I pushed C for Chris when actually C means celebrity intro is
There
what
you
C
go.
means. Let's try number 1 for Chris.
Hey, Daryl and Jeremy, or Jeremy and Daryl, as well as listeners of the Revolution Podcast. This is Chris from New York, and I am sending in feedback for the Kashmir episode. So, I like this episode. I feel that it is kind of slow up until the end. Basically, the episode gets really, really good when we find out that the guy who we had assumed was Rebel, who everyone had thought was Rebel, was actually militia, and he had double-crossed them and basically betrayed them. And up until that point, the episode is kind of slow, but that's when it really picks up pace, because the ending is really good. And I love the scene where Charlie is shot, and then she drifts off into this dreamlike state where she's with her father, and everything is happy, and she kind of has her happy ending, her light at the end of the tunnel, even though it's not real. That is a very beautiful scene. And of course, we have Miles on the other side, trying to beckon her back, trying to call her back. And I really love that scene. Here is my problem with it, though. And I don't mean to be knocking it too harshly because, like I said, it's beautiful. And it makes for really good TV. Top-notch, beautiful television. But my problem is that if she was so far gone physically, like if she had hit her head badly enough, you know, to have been in this state where, like she said to Miles, if I hadn't listened to you or if you hadn't been there to call me back, I would have stayed there. That ultimately would have meant that she would have died, right? I mean, if she had stayed in that dream, then that means that she would have died, I'm assuming. So if her if her health was in such bad jeopardy physically that she could have just stayed there and died, then how come that same night, at least I'm assuming it's that same night, since she says that it had been 3 hours that he had made her stay down there, Miles that is, why is it that she's completely fine and perky later that night if she was bad enough earlier that day that she could have died? It just didn't seem right to me. I was very confused about that. I am very confused about that. But it's good TV. Obviously, the story's not going to progress very much if Charlie is, in a coma, or if she's, in such bad health that she's not really talking much and she's kind of catatonic. We don't want that because that's not going to do anything to move the story forward. So for good television, it works. So, all right, well, that's basically it. Obviously, we have our mid-season finale, winter finale, whatever it's called, and we're going to be off for like 4 months, which is unfortunate. But it is what it is, right? All right. Well, thanks a lot for listening. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Chris. So what do you think about the main issue he had there? He loved the scene between Charlie and Ben, which we agreed was just wonderful. Yeah. But he had the complaint about Charlie being, seemingly okay after really a near-death injury that occurred.
Right. Well, I'm not totally sure if she was so close to death. It does represent that. I think we can agree on that. But
right.
How close was she really to death? I don't know if it really tells us. But, you could die of a concussion, but I don't think you could not die of a concussion by willing yourself out of it. So maybe that pokes a hole in that. But I don't know. Yeah, it does kind of bother me that he mentions that poses that question to us. So
yeah, I'll say two things. And obviously he called this in before last night's episode, and we saw the injury still present last night. She was still struggling with it, and they had to get her some help and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he may not feel the same way now after having seen the way that it was readdressed last night. But at the other hand, he's exactly right. With TV, unfortunately, you got to move on, and things aren't necessarily realistic to the nth degree. I mean, because he said it himself. We don't want to watch a show where they're having to wait around for a few days for Charlie to get
right.
And the other thing, I guess I'll say a third point, is they were already in Philadelphia at that point. They had made it through the subway tunnel, so they were in Philadelphia. So they needed to find a place to get to safety. They didn't have to travel far to get there. So it was more of a, are you well enough to go just a little bit farther so we can get to a more secluded area, a more safe place.
Right.
And I think that was reasonable for that. But honestly, I didn't really think much of it, but I do appreciate his point of view on that, because I really wouldn't have thought of it otherwise.
And we see her bleeding in yesterday's episode, but she was bleeding on her left side.
Well, she got shot on her right side.
Right, and then she landed on her left.
She landed on her left, which I think that was because the bullet just grazed her.
Right.
The bigger injury was when her head hit the steps.
Right.
When there was the opportunity for Stairway to Heaven and they didn't take it.
Yes, exactly.
But that seemed to be the bigger injury that was...
Right. I thought she actually landed on the same side, so...
No, it was a different side.
Okay,
let's move along, and the next feedback is going to come in from someone who's in the chat room right now, Bonita, also known as Yogabon.
Hey guys, this is Bonita in Atlanta, also known as Yogabon in the chat. Finally leaving some feedback for Revolution. I've been slow to warm up to it, but I really liked last night's episode, and I just wanted to give a little bit of feedback, just a smidge, as they say here in the South. Anyway, I liked what happened there. I'm glad Elizabeth Mitchell is going to be more forefront in the show. I think her strength and character and presence is really needed. But I really can't figure out why she didn't grab the pendant on her way out after killing that guy. That didn't make sense to me. Maybe she did grab it, and Murrah simply has another pendant, Jaffe's pendant or something. I'm not really sure. I lost count of how many pendants he's got control of. But anyway, that was what I was wondering about. I think all the cast did a much better job tonight as far as being a real cohesive unit, and they really did look like a family. As Miles said, that's his new family. Anyway, that's my feedback. This is Yoga Bond of the Alfreda Division of the Rebel Force. Peace out.
Great sign off, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Good job, Yoga Bond. All right, you want to take this? You want me to take this? You have an
I'll
answer
let you
for
lead
this?
off.
Huh?
I'll let you lead off.
Okay. I had the exact same thought the first time I watched the episode. I thought, well, that was so stupid of them to leave the pendant behind.
Mm-hmm.
So when I rewatched the episode, I paid attention to this scene in particular because I wanted to see how it all played out. Here's what happened. She gets it working. Strausser's in there kind of hovering over her, being a total creep. And, he says something to her, and then the shooting, in the distance, we see or we hear the gunfire that's actually being aimed towards Charlie and Danny.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, she doesn't know that. Nobody knows where it's coming from. So now she's alone with Strausser, and she sees the hammer. So that's when the little fight breaks out with Strausser, and she eventually gets the upper hand on him, stabs him through the chest with the machete. She's on top of Strausser, having just killed him, when Miles comes in. They haven't seen each other. She was surprised to see him. He was a little bit surprised to just stumble upon her like that. Then she gets up, she slaps Miles, and no sooner had she done that, they share just very few words. Then from the opposite side of the room, Jeremy and his gang comes in. So they have nowhere to go. They can't. The pendant is now in the amplifier between Jeremy and Rachel. She can't go in to get the pendant because that would be going towards Jeremy right into the line of fire.
Right.
They've got no choice but to flee at that point. She and Miles run through the doorway that's right there that Miles had just come into, which meant the pendant stayed behind. So that's what happened. It made sense after I rewatched it and kind of paid attention to a whole circumstances that transpired there and the timeline of how they happened. But man, I wish she had gotten that pendant on her way out.
Yeah.
But for plot reasons too, Miles or Monroe needs a pendant to kick the plot up another notch.
Yeah. As Emerald would say. Bam.
I guess so.
So no, I agree. I mean, it's obvious that she didn't have any time, but it's definitely something that maybe she shouldn't have stood over Strausser that long.
I did seem like she was kind of hovering over his dead body, which was also kind of weird.
I don't know. The first thing I do is I go grab that.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I can't let them have this.
Exactly.
Even if I throw it down a gutter and prevent them from having it for a while.
Right.
I mean, who's going to look down a gutter? They think I took it, right?
Exactly.
So, I don't know. It's just, I think she should have had a little bit more presence of mind. But, like you said, for reasons to empower Monroe, he has to have the pendant.
Right. Empower. Nice pun.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Yogabon, for sending that in. Hopefully that answered your question. I think it did. Let's move on to Jess.
Hey, this is Jess in Atlanta. I just finished watching the season finale literally like 2 seconds ago, and I was definitely sitting on the edge of my seat for the entire thing. This was obviously by far the best episode, probably because it's finale, but still, it was phenomenal in my book. Like, it was amazing. Obviously, since I'm completely incoherent and can't form any thoughts. So, good thing I wrote down some notes, so I'm gonna kind of go through that. I did find that Charlie was a little bit redeemed for me in this finale episode, finally. I wrote down a note, it was like, yes, B.A. Charlie, and I liked the way she was smirking at Neville. Also, Neville seriously has a grudge, and he's kind of become pretty twisted based on, like, everything that's happened to him in the past. I mean, you could really tell that by what he was saying to Aaron. And I liked the little bit about Miles and Bass, how they were making fun of themselves, saying they were pirates for having to learn how to fight with swords. And then you really saw, like, one, that Bass was completely unstable and unhinged, and two, you actually kind of learned why. We had yet another Harry Potter reference, so I don't know if anyone's been keeping track of those or has anyone's going to take the time to really dig through, but I would be really interested to see just how it kind of ties back in, because we've seen a lot of things that could refer back to that. And then kind of the last thing I wrote down here was that Strausser is seriously a creeper. I don't know, something obviously happened when Rachel was first captured, and I'd really like to get some more information on that. Based just on the whole overall everything that happened in this episode, you've got Monroe that has power, and now obviously our gang, the Matheson family, so to speak, is on the hunt for power themselves. So, or they're going to have to be. I mean, that's the only way that this is really going to work, because otherwise Monroe is just going to completely flatten everyone. I mean, if he has helicopters and no one else even has power, it's just no contest. So I think it'll be great to see how our gang really finds all the rest of the pendants, because I really think that's where they're going. I'm really hoping for some more insight and background on Randall and how he ties into all of this. I really still think he was the cause of the whole thing, but I also think he obviously has the key to turning everything back on. Well, this is getting kind of long, and I'm not even sure if you guys can fit it in, but I hope you can. If not, it'll be really interesting to hear my thoughts again in a few months' time here. So take care, and I'll hear you guys after the break.
All right. Thanks, Jess. Well, we did get it in. She got it in just under the wire, so we were able to fit it into tonight's podcast. What do you think, Jeremy?
Well, I was on the edge of my seat, too. If I didn't have the laptop in my lap, typing notes.
There were several times where I realized that I had tensed up watching the episode, and I was like, "Oh, I got to exhale still." It was that good of an episode for me.
Yeah.
She said it was the best of the series. I said the same thing last episode. Did you say?
I haven't said anything, but I'd probably agree that there's a lot of good stuff going on.
Definitely.
So, but yeah, there was a couple times I just used the word "bam," but there were a couple times I was just like, "Bam!" Just something just happened. I was like, yeah. But there were other times where I was like, "You're not moving fast enough, shooting." But
one of the bam moments for me was when Strausser was killed.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that we talked about what might have happened between Strausser and Rachel in the past, because she was definitely getting him back for something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the very least there was physical torture going on, but it certainly seemed like there might have been more than that he had done to her, which was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And he got what he deserved.
Oh, yeah. So, she says Charlie was redeemed in her mind, and I know a lot of people are going to agree. I'm a Charlie fan, been since the beginning. She's annoyed me here and there, but I'm glad to see that she's redeemed in Jess's eyes. And then she talks about Neville being twisted and holding a grudge. We've mentioned that in the previous episode, but the previous episode being episode 7, which is the actual recap. But
she mentioned Bass being completely unhinged, I think was the words that she used. And I think it's an interesting thing, because we really didn't see him after Miles left him. What's going to happen to his mental state now that has happened? I mean, because he was pretty unhinged before. Is that going to make him even crazier, or is it going to give him some sort of resolution, which might make him a little bit more stable? I doubt it. You know what I mean? I think the answer would be that he's going to become even more unhinged. Yeah,
well, I think it's going to lead for an excuse for Julia to push Tom to take over. So I think he's going to degrade, and then they're going to make that power play. Right. So, no, she also mentioned that Monroe has these helicopters. He's got power, and these others aren't going to be able to stand a chance. But I would like to go ahead and point out that at this time that you don't need power to take out an AT-AT, or ATST rather. All you need is a log on a rope. Smash that cabin. I mean, hey.
Is that your Star Wars reference for the week?
One of them. There were a lot of references, but I don't know. It's I think they could take them out without power. I mean, you put a wire up in your town. They can't hover over it.
Yeah.
Float little balloons. You could find a way to help neutralize that.
You could, but you know that they're going to come up with their own power source.
Yeah.
And it won't be. You predicted half an episode, I said, by the end of the second episode.
But if the Ewoks can do it, so can you.
That's right. Okay, let's get into reading some here. Would you like to take the first one, or would you like for me to take it?
I'll go ahead and start.
All right.
As soon as I move that over and get all of it. Okay. This first feedback comes in from Brittany in Tennessee, and she says, "Hey guys, trying again to submit my feedback regarding the fall finale. What a great final episode for 2012. If we had to leave it on a cliffhanger, I'm glad to see the group is at least together, for now. Regarding this episode, the biggest mystery to me was, how do Aaron and Rachel know each other? I believe that Rachel was gone before Aaron met up with the villagers. Am I wrong? Also, did you guys sense any relational tension between Miles and Rachel? They may have been an item at one point in the past. Really interesting to see how that plays out. Regarding the helicopters, I'm not a mechanic and do not know much about motors, but a stagnant motor that had been sitting in place with the same gas in it for 15 years, wouldn't it be nearly impossible to start? Thanks, guys, for the great podcast. I recommended your show to people on Get Glue. From Nowhere Safe, Brittany from Tennessee.
Well, thank you for the recommendation.
Yes, thank you. And I like your sign out. Or, yeah.
You like that she's from... Oh, you like
Nowhere
the
Safe.
Nowhere Safe.
Yeah.
I see.
So,
I guess, where do we want to start with this one? We don't really know the timeline between when Aaron and the Mathesons connected, but I think the only logical thing here that we can conclude is that they were in the happy little cul-de-sac along with Aaron before, she left, or at least they had connected. I guess not. We can't assume they were in the cul-de-sac, but obviously it can.
He may have been with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't believe they were in the cul-de-sac at all, but he may have been following them around, which again leads me to believe or question, why is he in the shape that he's in? I mean, the guy is walking across the nation. So
I hate questions like that. They really bug me. I mean, just let it be a show. There have always throughout history been large people. There will always be large people. Some of it has to do with genetics. Some of it has to do with eating, overeating and other things like that, lack of exercise. But,
But he's starving and he's getting plenty of exercise.
All right.
All right, I'll drop
it's
that.
It's a TV show.
Yeah.
I mean, because if everyone was just perfectly in their physique, then people would complain, well, this is just a show with a bunch of pretty people on it. I mean, people are never satisfied one way or the other. Just let it be a TV show.
Yes.
Sorry, it bugs me, obviously. What else does she talk about? The helicopters. You know what? We've got Jim that's going to comment on that. So why don't we save comments on that until we hear both of them? That way we don't say, well, we just covered that. We can talk about those together. Sorry. Chat room is agreeing with me. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we covered everything else in there, didn't we? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to totally poo-poo in the middle of your feedback there, Brittany. All right, let me get to the next one here. This one is from Mark. And Mark says, hey guys, love the podcast. Here are a couple of my comments after finishing this half of the first season. Number 1, considering all the listener feedback regarding why someone would turn off the power worldwide, killing billions, I don't think even a nuclear war rises to that level. My theory, Jeremy, you're going to love this, and I think you might agree, is that somehow time travel is involved.
Good. Good.
Think of it. Someone has developed the ability to alter the past. The amount of damage that could be caused by that power would be beyond imagining. That would be a good reason to cause so much destruction, in order to prevent someone from using that ability to alter the past. Perhaps that's what Randall is building in his secret bunker.
I'm just going to say, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop it. Love it.
All right.
All right, carry on.
I will say that's the most plausible reason for time travel that has been thrown out yet.
Yeah. Well, I don't throw out plausible reasons for time travel. I just throw out time travel.
Okay, number 2. We need to get more information on how the blackout occurred. Is it a permanent condition and the pendants only provide a temporary respite? Or is there a device that is generating the field that are, to paraphrase Aaron, breaking the laws of physics and the pendants shield them from that effect? Number 3. Did the developers really turn off the power? In the first episode, Ben rushes in and claims that they are going to turn the power off. This seems to astonish Rachel, so it doesn't seem like they had a hand in making the decision to turn off the power. I kind of had the opposite. I thought that Rachel was scared that it was happening, but
Mhm.
knew that it was either a matter of time or that it was a likelihood or a possibility.
Okay. I'd agree with your
My take on that.
your take on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 4. But to play contrary to the above comment, why didn't any of the pendant holders organize to get the power back up? Is the idea impossible and the risk of pendant falling into a warlord's hands too great? Grace seemed to be content hiding out and periodically reporting to an unknown network content. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last week, and I think that's a mystery that we want answers to as well. I mean,
Yeah.
why wouldn't they, turn into some great Voltron force and, unite their powers together unless they didn't have the means to protect themselves and needed to scatter for protection?
Yeah. Well, they would have been the only people with tanks. So.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hopefully we'll find that out at some point.
Yeah.
We've got to. Number 5, speaking of the unknown network contact, I think this faction is key to Revolution. It shows that there is at least some organization with the pendant holders. For what purpose and how many of them it includes is still a mystery that seems Rachel is oblivious or doesn't care to address after snatching Grace. I'm sorry, I said Rachel, but it should have been Randall. Randall is oblivious to or doesn't care to address. And the last one, number 6. Last feedback on Nobody's Fault But Mine. Last feedback, and it's regarding this episode. The swordplay throughout the series has been excellent. I loved the fight scene between Monroe and Miles. I really hated the initial confrontation between them. Miles lowers his weapon and explains to Monroe that he had wished he had killed him. What? Couldn't he have said that with the weapon still sighted on him and then shoot him? I'm completely baffled at that scene. Keep up the good work. Captain Marco from the 34th Detroit Regiment of the Monroe Militia. Nice sign-off again. Jeremy, I think he feels the same way you did about that confrontation there between Miles and Monroe.
Yeah, it seems like Captain Marco is. I like Captain Marco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely, like I said before, it would have been the logical thing to do, the easy thing to do, but I mean, you wanted him dead anyway, but I would have killed some of the drama that they built as a result.
You can create more drama.
I know you can, but I like what they did.
I mean, you're going to have drama with Julie and Tom.
Yeah.
I mean, what's she going to do in that closet with him?
Let's not talk about that. All right.
Thank you, Marco.
All right. The next one is Jim in Wisconsin. I actually trimmed it down a little bit.
Okay.
It's still pretty long, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll get started.
All right.
Might take shifts.
You might
on
need a
this sucker.
sandwich on this one.
All right. Greetings, Jeremy and Daryl. Thank you, Jim. This week's episode was pretty good all the way around, except for one part that I'll get into later. Initially, I gave it a 9.5, but after sleeping on it, I'm going to give it an 8.4 hoarded Huey helicopters out of 10. That aside, I really did like the way we were sent off on hiatus. We got a few interesting lines of dialogue that will hopefully turn into plot points when the show comes back, and we got a solid cliffhanger that leaves Team Miles in quite a predicament. I must admit, though, this could also have made a decent series finale, and the show not been picked up. I wonder if that's the reason why the plot moved so fast during the first 10 episodes. Had the show been canceled, we would have at least been given a complete, although short, story arc. I'll be interested to see if the plot slows down a bit after we come back to new episodes. For some reason, Rachel is still a mystery to me. Some of her questions to Charlie were odd, and I can't tell if she still has ulterior motives or not. Maybe I'm just used to Elizabeth Mitchell playing Juliet from Lost. For a while there, you could never tell whose side that character was on, and I think it's bleeding through to the Rachel character for me. Not that it's a bad thing, it just seems similar, that's all. But why did she want to know what Ben said before he died? And why was she so sure that Miles had hurt Charlie? Makes me wonder what he did to her in the past. Or maybe Rachel was lied to by Monroe. Who knows? I'm looking forward to seeing more of her with Team Miles in a few months. Strasser was back this week, and thankfully he didn't make it through to the second half of the season. Having a daughter of my own, the whole line about Peaches really bothered me. But I stood up and cheered when Rachel went all mama bear and killed him with his own knife. She's tallying up quite the body count. It must get easier the more times you do it. Once again, though, she has a line about something he did to her. What type of torture was she put through? The character has so many layers, and I think she'll have a big reveal later on in the series. The Miles and Monroe portion of the episode was interesting. Bass is portrayed as a loyal friend that lost his family before the blackout, hence why he considered Miles family. The origin of the militia emblem was given out, and I think most people like myself felt that Bass was someone that could be saved. He even gave Miles the chance to join him and let the rest of his team go free. But Miles made his choice last week and backed it up with a great hand-to-hand combat scene. I actually thought Miles was going to injure Bass enough to think him dead as part of the cliffhanger, only to have him survive. It's too bad Jeremy, and his men had to show up and shoot the room full of holes. Why are all the malicious soldiers such bad shots? Here's the part of the episode that made me lower my rating. The helicopter scene. Being a big fan of the Transformers series of movies, I feel I can suspend a little disbelief as well as anyone. There's a pendant that can turn on electricity? Fine, I'll go along with that. I like science fiction. But my background in design and engineering stepped up and made me cry shenanigans when that Huey took off. Those things need daily maintenance to fly, not to mention fuel that hasn't separated over the course of 15 years. Sure, all the electronics would turn on, but that thing had been sitting for so long that I'm sure that most of the normally lubricated rotating parts would have seized up by now. I sincerely hope they show us that Monroe has people taking care of those things so they could even remotely be able to fly again. Granted, it had a militia emblem on it too, so maybe he does have some sort of maintenance group working on them. But it just didn't seem right that the helicopter looked like brand when it took off. I guess brand new, I'm sorry. I think it would have been a better idea to show his men testing the range of the amplifier during the show, and then aim something a little more electronically lethal at our heroes for the cliffhanger. I just want to see where he's getting a usable fuel from to power his new war machine. The fall finale took us back to where the show began. The theme of the first 10 episodes has been all about family, both saving what's left of one and destroying one that was forged by best friends. I like the whole blackout story, but JJ has done it again, and I care more about these characters than what's going on around them. As long as they don't end up in a church at the end of the series, I'll be happy. From the corner of Shut Up and Stay Here, Jim in Wisconsin. Whew.
Good job.
Thanks.
Good job.
That was great feedback, and there's a lot that each paragraph here is something that I like.
Yeah.
But do you want to start off?
Well, let's start with the helicopter since that was also brought up earlier.
Okay.
I think Brittany was the one that brought that up earlier.
Okay.
So, Jim's got an engineering background, he said, so there's definitely maintenance that has to take place with any type of vehicle.
Right.
Much more so an airborne vehicle.
Yeah.
I guess, he made the point that the militia emblem had been put on there, so obviously they've done some work on the vehicle to do that at the very least. I doubt that they would only paint the emblem on there and say, all right, good to go. But would they, at the same time, would they have the means to get the vehicle fully operational? We saw that it took them this long to get a steam locomotive up and running. And I'm pretty sure, not knowing anything about the inner workings of a helicopter, I'm pretty sure it's more complex than a steam locomotive is.
Mm-hmm.
So, suspension of disbelief on this?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
I'm just going to call this myth busted.
Okay.
I agree with Jim here. It's completely implausible to have that thing already flying.
Uh-huh.
You could restore it. I have no doubt of that. I think given the time, given the maintenance, you could, but then you need the fuel.
Right.
Then you need to retrain somebody how to fly it.
That's the thing, right? Nobody could have had any experience flying that before. Well,
I'm going to go ahead and say,
I guess,
the guy who's flying it had experience flying helicopters.
Yeah.
We don't know what kind of helicopters, but I'm pretty sure that he's going to be somebody who's a pilot in the past. But 15 years without flying.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot you forget in 15 years.
Right.
So,
And the fuel too, because we're not
Right.
just talking about gasoline.
Yeah.
We're talking about aircraft fuel here.
Mhm.
Which, again, I'm not going to act like I know a whole lot about, but I know it's not your off-the-shelf type
Yeah.
of gasoline.
so
I think what they want us to believe is that there was some sort of maintenance performed on these vehicles by
Mhm.
Monroe's men to try to get them operational so that when the day came, they would be ready.
yeah,
And because they obviously had been cleaned, and we mentioned the paint and stuff like that. So just at least a very quick view of it said some attention has been paid to this vehicle.
right.
That should be enough. But kind of like last week with the no way they could have run out of air in that time frame. We just need to kind of go with it for the story, for the sake of the story.
Yeah.
Although I think this was actually more. I was less put off by this than I was the air last week, because I feel like even just the M that we put on there was at least them saying, look, here's some
Yeah.
attention that has been paid to
Mhm.
this thing. We don't have time to show you all the things they've done, at least not in
Yeah.
this episode. Where last week it was just completely absurd that they
Mhm.
would run out of air. But I don't know.
Mhm.
It's a good point for sure.
I'm going to go back to his first paragraph.
Okay.
He talks about this episode actually making a decent series finale, and whether or not that would explain why we were receiving so many answers.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a good reason for the pace that we have had set. I hope it's not going to slow down drastically. I wouldn't mind seeing it slow down a bit, but the pace has kind of been spoiling. And I do agree. I think Monroe would have died in the Pocket universe.
Well, Strausser
And-
died instead. When you said that Monroe wouldn't make it past half the season, what you meant was Strausser. You got your names mixed up.
There you go. Yeah. So I think he's got a point there. So
Yeah, I think it's definitely a point worth kind of putting in your mental bank and observing the second half of the season. Will they continue to give us
Mhm.
answers at the same clip, knowing that they even then, the reason I pause is because even now they only know that they're getting the rest of the season. They don't know about a season 2 yet.
yeah.
But I don't think it'll change. I think they'll keep with the pace that they've been going at.
Yeah.
And I don't think this would have worked as a series finale.
Really?
No.
Okay.
I mean, what satisfaction would you have gotten out of that? Monroe has the pendant. Our guys have a helicopter gun, bearing down on them.
Well, it wouldn't have ended the same. They would have killed Monroe and left. I mean, it'd have a different
that would
ending.
have been a little bit more satisfying. Yeah. Did he say that? Did I totally miss that? I guess.
I don't think he said that, but I think that's kind of implied if it's a
Okay.
series finale.
I thought he
that
meant the way
there's
the
some
episode ended
resolution.
would have worked as a series
Yeah.
finale.
I mean, heck, maybe Rachel made an atom bomb. Boom, everybody's dead. There you go.
Mushroom cloud the whole planet.
Yeah.
Huh?
So,
All right.
Yeah.
The one other thing I'll mention on this is that he talked about Bass could have been saved, and I
Mhm.
think he was inferring that he's reached a point now where he can't be saved. Do you feel the same way, or do you still feel like there might be that Darth Vader moment on his deathbed where he kind of comes back?
well, since Rachel's Darth Vader, I don't think he's going to come back.
I'm not saying he will. I'm saying, do you think he has it in him?
No,
Is he too far gone?
I think he is. I think he's the bad guy. I don't think that Miles is going to extend that. I mean, we
Okay.
see from his
No,
very
I don't
action
think so
here.
either. Would you feel cheated if there was some redemption for Bass?
Never. I don't have a problem seeing somebody change their spots. I think having a redemption or something makes you a little bit more of a round character.
Okay.
But I do expect them to explain it well. If that does end
If
up
that
being-
happens, right?
yeah.
There's got to be a good explanation for
Yeah.
the change. Yeah, I agree.
So
All right. Well, thank you, Jim, for that email. Good stuff as always. We do appreciate your contribution. I've got one more to read here. This comes in from Andrew. And Andrew, I'm sorry I missed your feedback last week. I knew that I had forgot to put it in the show notes. And but he wrote in last week also and was not happy with the episode. This is what he had to say this week. This is Andrew from Montreal, by the way. He says, "Hey, D and J, I have changed my attitude about Revolution. I now see it as comic book science fiction. and not take anything as possible reality. And then this is kind of the caricature he's putting the show in here. Mustached super evil villain killed my slasher mum. How people get so far so fast on foot, and helicopters sitting for 15 years start up the first time. Deja vu. Girl gets caught. Uncle rescues. Nerd helps escape with big dangerous move, etc. Now he says reason for hope of change. The promo didn't overpromise. I agree with that. Finally, Miles and Monroe meet. That was good. Daughter not embracing mother at first meeting. Jeremy and I both agreed that was a good move for the show. Nobody was whining. Agree.
Mm-hmm.
And a good face slap from Rachel. So those are all things that he liked that show. I think if I'm understanding him right, are showing that the show might be going in a better.
Yeah.
Last week he wrote in and said that basically you have to be an atheist. You have to suspend all belief in order to enjoy this show. So this week it sounds like he's got a little bit more hope, but he's still very dissatisfied with some of the things that the show is doing. And you know, I get that. I understand your points. You know, I've obviously taken a different effect or a different take on it, and I think that the different take is just in how much do you allow that to bother you. We just had the conversation about helicopters, and for some people that may go, just that's absolutely ridiculous. I'm done. And some others may go, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't work, but I'm still with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's going to be on an individual level, I think.
Yeah. Well, I may make a lot of complaints, but I tend to just let it slide most of the time, unless it's a chick flick, and then my wife will testify that I'm pretty critical when it comes to that boy accepting that girl.
Yeah.
In 5 minutes, and then they're married. So.
And it is science fiction. I mean, they did say that what caused the blackout is based in some sort of probable science or plausible science, I should say.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that the entire thing is built, you know, on fundamental science. It is science fiction. There's some fantasy. They said, you know, in the was it you or did I see that in the chat room?
The chat room.
Yeah. So you know, that's Lost was the same way. It was total fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say the science fiction. Sure, there was some science fiction going on there. There was probably more fantasy than science fiction going on with Lost.
Yeah. Well, I hate to burst some bubbles, but science fiction in the 70s was so stupid and implausible.
Yeah.
They're never going to be able to do that. Well, with the tricorder or whatever, well, we have cell phones. You're never going to be able to do whatever. Well, we have spaceships. We've been to the moon. I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened that people never
We had
said
been
would
to the
happen.
moon in the 70s.
I know. I'm going back in time there.
Okay.
But
just wanted to divert hate
I was
mail from
hoping you wouldn't stop me there because I knew that you would. But so I understand that. But there's just things. I mean, when you go back to what's that invasion? Wells.
Oh, Orson Welles?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
With dude, Tom Cruise was in a horrible make of it.
I know what you're talking about.
Good radio program. War of the Worlds.
Thank you.
So
it was not coming to me either.
Yeah. I mean, that was before a lot of any of what we've seen happen. And people said none of that could ever happen. And I think the technology we have is starting to bring that. So I don't think we need to forget that science fiction is normally completely just made up. But we've still been spoiled because people want to make those things real. We just assume they've always been based in some form of nonfiction.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point. All right, we've got a couple more audios here to listen to. This first one comes from Kome.
Hey guys, this is Kome from Georgia. This is a great episode. All I have to say is wow. But man, I hate endings like that. I just hate it when a TV show episode ends with just having one of the protagonists having the gun pointed at them. This time it was a helicopter gun turret. Now we have to wait all the way to March to get new episodes. I don't think I can wait that long. I really hate episodes endings like that. One observation on Tom Neville. I don't think that this guy is ever going to become quote-unquote good guy. He might switch over allegiances because his family's in danger, but I don't think he's ever going to become good. The reason why I say that is because the conversation that he had with Aaron, it just seems like he's a really petty guy who's taking out his crappy life that he had prior to the blackout on Aaron, who he really doesn't know or hasn't done anything to him. And it just seems like he's angry at the world because he worked at a cubicle, so therefore everyone else has to suffer now because he has the power. So with that being his background, I don't see how it's possible for him to be come to the good side of the Force. This episode, again, was a real big game changer. I cannot wait till March. I think it's way too long of a break, but I really like this episode. I had a feeling that Monroe was going to get killed, especially when they had for him, but I'm glad that he was not killed off. With all the other stuff that went on this episode, I think it's great that he's still in the show because I think going forward, he is going to be a much, much better bad guy. And that sword fight that him and Miles had was awesome. We need more like that. I would like to see another. I'd like to see a part 2 of that sword fight. It was pretty cool. All right, guys, take care. I enjoyed the podcast, and I'm looking forward to feedback. Bye.
That's interesting because we just had the conversation about Bass. Is there any hope? Is there any hope of redemption in him, or any chance of that?
Yeah.
He's saying there's not for Tom.
Yeah.
Do you have the same opinion about Tom?
I'll actually disagree with him here. The reason that I think Tom can become redeemed is because he's petty. And it's because of these, his attitude towards these things. I think those are some things that can change.
Do you think that Tom is trying to be the man that he thinks his wife
I do.
wants? I do too.
I think he's trying to be a tougher person. He's trying to protect what he loves, and he's seen people try and take that away, and I think he's overcompensating for that.
I think that overcompensation is the right word too. So I'm going to take your side on this, Jeremy, that there is some hope for Tom. Don't get me wrong, Tom is dark.
Yes.
Tom's in a bad spot, but I think that I don't know that he'll come around either, but I think it's more likely for him than Bass.
Yeah.
It might mean that he and his wife have to part ways.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe through death, but maybe not. I mean, because I think she's the neck that's turning him still.
I agree with that, and that question kind of would lead to: can she be redeemed? Can she be changed? So, I think that something may cause her to change. I think maybe Jason will soften her. And
that
I think,
would be the thing where you would think it would have to come from that
But
position.
I think ultimately, Jason will calm Tom. I think something about Jason will interact with his dad. He's going to mention at some point, we don't use our fists against humans. He's gonna use that against Tom. And it's going to either pull Tom back down to earth, or Tom's going to follow Monroe and die. So,
now we still haven't seen Julia's perspective of what happened or her backstory at all, and I think gaining that perspective will certainly help us get a better understanding of her motives, and what her insecurities that might be driving her. Who knows?
Well, I think Julia, she's very interesting. I do think, like you said, she's kind of holding Tom back, but I don't know if Tom will eventually be redeemed, but right now I'm on the side that he will. So.
Okay. And he also thought Monroe was going to bite it there for a while. And it didn't happen. I was totally with you on that, Comey. All right, one last feedback tonight. This one comes in from Mark, and those in the chat room love to have the little drinking game here with Mark. So here we go.
Hi everyone, Mark from Ontario, Canada here. Here's my feedback about last night's episode, Nobody's Fault But Mine. First off, let me start by saying, wow, what an episode. It was by far my favorite. And damn you, NBC, for making us wait 4 months to see what happens next. It's interesting to hear that Bass has a house in Boston. Perhaps that will be a future destination for Charlie and company? And as for Charlie, for all you Charlie haters out there, I sure hope she redeemed herself in your eyes last night. I loved her in this episode. I thought she showed a lot of maturity and spunk. I was very happy she didn't run to her mom like a little girl when she first saw Rachel. She remained in charge and showed bravery when Strasser threatened them. She kept her head cool and managed to get Danny out as she promised. Charlie sure has grown up. The question of whether or not Miles knew Rachel was alive was finally answered in this episode. I wonder what Miles did to Rachel for her to ask Charlie if he had hurt her. Several episodes ago, we saw a flashback of Miles and Bass after the blackout on the road to go find Ben and his family. I take it from last night's episode that they never did find them, because when Monroe sees Charlie, he says, "Nice to finally meet you, Charlotte." And I don't know if it means anything, but that's the second episode I noticed with a Harry Potter reference. I was a bit disappointed when Rachel turned on the amplifier that the only thing we saw power up was a flashlight. With a half-mile radius, I would have thought stuff all over the power plant would have been turning on. I can't figure out why it took so long for Jeremy and his boys to catch up to Miles. You see Miles run away from them with them in pursuit. A couple of seconds later, he runs into Monroe and has time for a firefight, a long discussion, and then a sword fight before Jeremy finally shows up. What was that all about? Although Aaron didn't do very much in this episode, he did manage to fight off one of his personal demons. In the flashback a couple of weeks ago, he told his wife that he was so useless he couldn't even start a fire. He got over that last night when he started the fuse with flint and tinder. I think we're going to see a lot more of him becoming stronger when the season resumes. We also saw how strong a woman Julia is. She showed a lot of strength when being held by Miles, and even begged Tom not to give in. She'll definitely play an important role in the future. The ending was great. The chopper rising up in the air, everyone frozen in place. I kept thinking, why don't you run? But I guess after 15 years of no power, seeing an armed helicopter pointed at you would be very intimidating. The only thing that would have made the ending better and more suspenseful, in my opinion, would have been if we actually saw the Gatling gun start to fire before the credits rolled. My thoughts on what's going to happen next? I don't think they had time to move the amplifier into the chopper. So if Charlie and company starts to run, I don't think it can chase after them without the risk of leaving the pendant's radius. It's going to be very tense, but they'll all get away. Anyways, that's about it for my thoughts. Now I'm on to Fringe and over 230 related podcasts. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and talk to you again in March.
Nice. I love that, Mark, the 230 related podcasts. I don't know which podcast he might be talking about.
I don't know of any that have run 230 on one show.
Maybe the Fringe podcast by Golden Sparrow Media.
Maybe.
It's
a possibility.
Which would be up to, 250 or so by the time we're all said and done with that show.
You'd better hit a nice round number.
I know, right? We need to hit a nice round number.
It's going to be something like 237.
No, 242 would be okay.
I was actually about to say the same thing. So it works completely, so go for 242.
Okay, so many good nuggets in that. He talked about Charlie and Rachel. He liked the way that reunion was handled. We've commented on that as well, and others have. I think suffice it to say, the fandom appreciates the way they handled that.
Yeah.
Now, he commented on something that we haven't talked about, and that was whether or not Miles realized that Rachel was alive, because we had been working off the assumption that he knew that she was still alive.
Yeah.
Now, I think she was alive when he left, but I think what I gathered from this was that he kind of assumed that after he left, Bass would have killed her. Is that what you think, too? Yeah,
that's kind of the way I picked it up through the episode. He kind of questioned Monroe, you kept her alive all these years?
Exactly.
So it shows us that he did expect her to either die because of Monroe or to have been sent out on her own. I don't know why he would think so, but apparently she was a prisoner when Miles left.
Right.
So, which I thought was interesting, and that may be why she's mad at Miles, because
he left her there.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Jeremy. I like that. He talked about Aaron finally making fire.
Yeah.
I made the same point in the chat room last night when we were watching it, because that was another point of him not being able to provide or protect his wife, being that he couldn't even make fire. And it took him long enough, but he did finally make fire. It was a big moment for Aaron. A turning point.
Yeah, I kind of
turning his man card.
Ooh, fire.
Exactly.
But
rips off his shirt.
Yes. So, no, I thought it was kind of interesting. The one place he's going to make fire is at the very end of a fuse.
Yeah.
And for a moment there, when he started lighting it, I was like, is he going to blow himself up?
Yeah.
Because he's striking flint on a fuse. And man, if it sparks short, he's done. He's hit by the pipe bomb.
Could be like Ernst.
Yeah.
Do you know who that is?
No.
You haven't got to that. Say someone in the chat room just said the same thing, like Ernst. They liked my caveman grunting thing that I did apparently as well.
That's good for them.
Although I must admit, when I did that, I scrolled up to watch myself in the video because it's on a bit of a delay. That was pretty funny looking when I did that.
Yeah.
Check out the video; it'll be on YouTube if you want to see my caveman grunt. Because I was also whipping my arm around in the air as if I were
a cowboy or something.
Well, as if I had a shirt that I was whipping.
You're
around.
a caveman with a shirt too. So. Yeah. That's impressive.
Anyway, what else do we want to talk about there with Mark?
Well, he did say at the very beginning, "Wow," and Comey said it. And I don't know if that word was specifically used by anybody else, but I just found that was interesting.
Yeah.
It seems that a lot of people were thoroughly enjoying it.
I agree. In fact, with 10 minutes to go, I felt like it had already earned the title of best episode yet. And I tweeted it. I said, basically, wow, with 10 minutes to go, this episode of Revolution is already the best episode yet. And that was kind of cool because NBC Revolution saw it and retweeted it.
All right.
But I felt that way. And then the last 2 minutes was even better.
Mm-hmm.
I do like his idea of getting the guns rotating and then hitting the end of episode button. That would have been a little bit more climactic than what we got.
Or they could jam because of maintenance.
Well, that may be what happens, right? Yeah. And Jim would be like, yes!
Well, I kind of hope somebody makes a comment when they shoot the rocket pod of, "You're fired." I can't do an Arnold. Can you do that for me?
You're fired.
Thank you.
I don't know, that's terrible, but I was thinking Donald Trump when you said you're fired.
Oh, true. Well,
I'm not going to do a Trump.
You remember True Lies, correct?
Yeah, of course.
Where he's in the Harrier, has the guy hanging on the rocket.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, "You're fired." Shoots him. Yeah.
That's a great Arnold. I mean, Arnold's got so many good ones, right?
Well, that's about all he could do.
That's right. One-liners are his shtick. All right, guys. Well, thanks for sending in feedback. We got so much good feedback this week. We appreciate everyone that sent that in. It'll be a while before we do another podcast, but feel free to send us in your feedback. I don't expect to do a feedback podcast between now and when Revolution comes back on. But if you would like to send it in anyway, send that in to 304-837-2278. That's our phone number. I didn't mention in the last podcast, you can go over to our website at goldenspiralmedia.com and click on the leave voicemail tab kind of hanging out there on the right-hand side of the page where you can use our SpeakPipe app to leave us some feedback. And, of course, you can also email us at feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com. Okay, it's time for the Twitter poll. All right, we got some really good responses this week to the Twitter poll. The Twitter poll question was, what has been your favorite moment of Revolution so far? So Alternacat came in first and said, when Danny tells Neville to shut up. For me, that was a turnaround moment for his character and made the whole Danny rescue worth it. Android Omega says the flashback to the invention of the power inhibitor was the coolest part of Revolution so far. Test 315 says Aaron setting off the pipe bomb and maybe finally realizing he isn't worthless and can think on the fly and land on his feet. Daymay2466 says it's got to be when Rachel stabbed Dr. Jaffe with the screwdriver. Proved once and for all, Mama Matheson is not to be messed with. Hoot Owl 26 said Miles and Bass confrontation. He has a family now, and Monroe is no longer a part of it. Zeppelin Driver said when Randall revealed his pendant tracking station, fully powered, of course, more mythology, less swashbuckling. I like that answer. Devin H. said the fall finale cliffhanger. Didn't think we'd get to this point so early. Can't wait to see the actual finale. I agree with that too. I haven't actually. They've all been good. Chiod0 says my favorite part of Revolution would have to be how fast the show is progressing. We seem to get answers every week. Zort70 said the lighthouse turning on was a good moment. But best is the reveal of Miles' involvement with the militia. Oh, yeah. I like that. No One's Minion said, finally seeing Charlie toughening up and not needing to be completely rescued. And Rachel going all BA the last 2 weeks. Cheese is here. Said, love the flashbacks and the Miles Monroe relationship, both good and bad. I agree. And Kome says, Cashmere. That's it. The whole episode. I love it.
What a song.
Eric Inberg says, my favorite part was Rachel stabbing the other scientist. I like that. Whimsy Moon says, when Rachel took out that guy that was going to steal her family's food. That was good. That was shocking because that was really the first time we saw Rachel could do some stuff. Carla C73 says, my favorite moment was that time when Charlie fell down and then overtook someone. Oh, wait, that happened a lot. Nice, Carla. And finally, the last one here is Aaron, and he says, favorite moment so far? One of two, Charlie talking far less, and the end of the episodes. Hopefully they come back with better writing. So, feeling a little bit short there. TJM says, I missed his. Did you use the RevTwit hashtag, TJM? Let me look at our mentions and see if there's some there.
I believe you got a tweet on it earlier. You were like, oh, look, I've got a tweet.
Yeah. Yeah, that was from Eric. Well, did I say TJM?
I thought it was TJM, yeah.
I'll tell you what, let me pull up my other Twitter app. I think you're right now that you mentioned that. And look at... It's refreshing.
Do you have the Jeopardy song queued up?
Nope. Here it is.
There we go.
TJM, Tristan says, my favorite moment has been the standoff between Miles and Monroe when we see flashes of their childhood. And I said Eric, I believe. Yep, I think I got the rest. So somehow that one got overlooked. So there we go. Lots of great responses. There's been a lot of great moments. It would be hard to choose just one. Yikes. Boy, I don't know. I don't know if I could choose just one. I think I might go with the when we saw the pendant in flashback, when we saw them turn the power off and then turn it back on.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. There's so many good moments so far.
Right now I'm going to just say hairless Ewoks.
That's a good answer, Jeremy. That's good. All right, well, guys, we gave you our contact information. If you want to participate in the RevTwit question, you have to wait for Revolution to come back on the air. And then when it does, follow us on Twitter at GSM Podcasts. And look for every Tuesday, I'll send out the question. Reply using the hashtag RevTwit, and that's all included in the Twitter poll question that I send out. All right, Jeremy, anything else?
I'm good to go for 4 months.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Revolution Podcast. I see Jeremy has a different sign-off for this episode. That's not the one you used last time, is it?
No.
Yeah, I'm going to use the same one. And that is, if you're going to use up all that ammo, make sure you know how to use a sword.
Run, you idiot.
The Revolution Podcast and Golden Spiral Media are not associated with Bad Robot Productions, Kripke Enterprises, Warner Brothers, or NBC. Golden Spiral Media's use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided within United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use. For advertising opportunities, live show, and other Golden Spiral Media podcast productions, visit goldenspiralmedia.com. Copyright 2012, Golden Spiral Media.